What up and happy Sunday. Let's talk more forensics. Specifically, what does the forensic download of Bethany's phone reveal? We know that law enforcement used her and Dylan's phones to determine the timeline, and amid new bombshell allegations that she and Dylan were texting each other during the actual murders, did Bethany see or hear things differently from Dylan? And is that content exculpatory for Brian Koberger? I've got all the details, so let's jump right into it. To fully examine and assess this topic, let's first circle back to the PCA and discuss all of the facts and all of the legal actions moving forward from December 2022. Initially, Bethany said that she saw Ethan and Xana at the Sigma Chi house from 9 p.m. to 1:45 a.m. She then states that Ethan and Xana returned to the King Road residence at approximately 1:45 a.m. Next, Bethany states in the PCA that all occupants of the King Road residence were home by 2 a.m. and asleep or at least in their rooms by approximately 4 a.m. Bethany clearly communicated to cops that she was inside the King Road residence at the time of the murders. Bethany's bedroom was located on the east side of the first floor of the King Road residence. To recap and to get a better visual from Bethany's perspective during the murders, let's examine this simulation. It is important to note she had a front-facing window on the first floor, so she had an entirely different view from Dylan, who had a back-facing window up on the second floor. But the most compelling piece of information that I gleaned from the PCA is, quote, reviews of forensic downloads of records from Bethany and Dylan's phone leads investigators to believe the homicides occurred between 4 and 4:25 a.m. So it is in fact their phones which established the timelines for the murders themselves, according to law enforcement. Now let's fast forward from the PCA to mid-April at the preliminary hearing, where Bethany is subpoenaed as a material witness by the defense for the hearing, but she responds with a motion to quash because she did not want to testify. An investigator for the defense also state that, quote, Bethany Funke has exculpatory evidence. We then learned in late April that Bethany essentially struck a deal with the defense for a, quote, interview in Nevada in lieu of returning to Idaho for the preliminary hearing. As a footnote, law enforcement is alleged to have interviewed Bethany up to 3 times, but her testimony has been sealed from the defense entirely. So the request for the interview essentially corroborates that statement. So it appeared that the case was heading for the preliminary hearing, where the defense might use Bethany's testimony to contradict the star witness for the prosecution, Dylan. However, the prosecution suddenly announced a grand jury indictment, eliminating the need for the preliminary hearing altogether, and also the Bethany interview. Was that a checkmate for the Bethany interview? And has the defense ever spoken to Bethany? New bombshell allegations are now coming to light, alleging that Bethany and Dylan were actually texting each other during the murders, which does not seem so implausible given that law enforcement confirmed it was the forensic download of their phones which established the timeline for the quadruple homicide. So let's talk about this. Would you find it damaging to the state's case to learn that Bethany and Dylan were texting one another during the actual murders? If so, did Bethany perhaps see or hear things differently from Dylan, prompting the exchanges? Did Bethany hear noises or crying that was alarming and not akin to, quote, partying? Did Bethany try to contact any of the roommates to ask what might be going on upstairs or to ask them to be quiet? Did Bethany see figures, i.e. more than one, outside of her window perhaps? Was one of them Brian Koberger? Does Bethany hold exculpatory evidence? Is Brian guilty or innocent? Talk to me.